Welcome to the channel. A storm is quietly gathering on the horizon of global trade, and its origins lie in the East. Imagine a world where everything you depend on your smartphone, your television, the solar panels on your roof. Even the food you eat suddenly becomes twice as expensive or disappears altogether. Now, picture that this is no longer a distant possibility, but a reality we may already be stepping into. In recent months, reports have surfaced showing that China, the manufacturing powerhouse of the world, is tightening its control over exports to the United States. This move is creating ripples throughout global trade, and its potential impact is profound. What does this mean for international commerce? Could this strategic shift by China be the spark that drives smaller nations to reconsider their dependence on the US-led global trade systems? And perhaps more importantly, could it mark the beginning of the end for an era where the U.S. economy has held the reins of global commerce for decades? For much of the 20th century, the world's economy revolved around a US-centric model, where the United States was not only the dominant superpower but also the center of global trade. The economic systems, institutions, and trade networks were designed in such a way that the U.S. had significant control and influence over international markets. However, as we move further into the 21st century, China's rapid rise as a global economic powerhouse is beginning to shift the balance of power. According to a recent Bloomberg report, U.S. imports of Chinese goods declined by a staggering 20% last year, signaling a deliberate effort at economic decoupling between the two largest economies in the world. Meanwhile, trade between China and emerging markets, including Brazil, India, and various countries in Africa, is thriving. These shifts are raising an essential question. Are we witnessing a tipping point in global trade where the US's leadership is starting to crumble? China's economic strategy is becoming clearer by the day. In 2023 alone, trade between China and BRICS nations Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa expanded by a striking 30%. This growth is part of China's deliberate effort to pivot away from the US-dominated economic systems and reconfigure global commerce in a way that places China at the center of this new framework. As these numbers show, China is making moves to reshape the global economic landscape and establish a more multipolar world order. Now, let's focus on a seemingly small but crucial issue: rare earth minerals. These minerals, which are essential in technologies like semiconductors, electric vehicle batteries, and military defense systems, are critical to the modern economy. Over 90% of the world's rare earth minerals are processed in China, making the U.S. highly dependent on Chinese exports. In 2021, the White House issued a report warning that this reliance on Chinese rare earths poses a significant national security risk. Yet, despite this recognition, little has been done to reduce the US's vulnerability to supply chain disruptions in this area. If China were to halt its export of these critical materials, the effects would be felt immediately. U.S. industries, especially those involved in automotive manufacturing, renewable energy, and technology, would face massive shortages of the materials that power modern production. The semiconductor industry, for example, is highly reliant on Chinese supply chains. Currently, the U.S. produces only 12% of the world's semiconductors, while China controls over 50% of the global semiconductor supply chain. In this scenario, could U.S. tech giants like Apple, Intel, and others survive such a major disruption? Would they be able to navigate the fallout of losing access to the materials that power the modern economy? According to Peter Zeihan, a geopolitical strategist, China's growing control over these materials is a direct challenge to Western supply chains and could have devastating consequences for U.S. industries. Consider looking around your home for a moment. From your television to your kitchen appliances, almost everything has a Made in China label. What happens when these goods become unaffordable or unavailable? A survey conducted by the Consumer Technology Association reveals that over 70% of electronics sold in the U.S. are sourced from China. As trade tensions have escalated, U.S. consumers have already begun to feel the pressure of rising prices. A recent report by the Wall Street Journal showed that electronics in the U.S. have increased in price by 15%, largely due to ongoing trade conflicts with China. Imagine this price hike doubling if China were to stop exporting goods altogether. Could U.S. manufacturers ramp up production quickly enough to meet demand? Historically, when disruptions like this occur in the supply chain, it takes years for domestic industries to catch up. The result would be significant price hikes across a wide range of goods, from electronics to home appliances. According to a study by the Peterson Institute for International Economics, the average American family could face an additional $22,000 in annual expenses due to rising prices and tariffs. The real question here is whether the American public will accept these increased costs. Will U.S. policymakers face growing pressure to ease trade restrictions and renegotiate deals with China? Or will they continue to pursue a hardline approach that could risk further harm to consumers? The answer to these questions could determine the future of U.S. trade policy and its relationship with China. While the U.S. is dealing with trade disruptions and rising costs, China is deepening its trade relationships with emerging economies. Through initiatives like the Belt and Road Initiative, China is investing heavily in infrastructure projects and trade agreements with countries across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Nations like Brazil, South Africa, and Saudi Arabia are beginning to pivot towards China, signaling a broader shift away from traditional U.S.-led trade alliances. This growing influence sends a clear message to smaller nations. It's time to rethink their role in the global economic system. India's recent decision to settle trade with Russia in rupees, rather than in US dollars, is a perfect example of this emerging shift. Similarly, countries in the ASEAN region are exploring regional payment systems to reduce their dependence on Western financial structures. This movement towards an alternative economic framework is gaining momentum, and the rise of multipolar trade blocs like BRICS, which now accounts for over 31% of global GDP, signals that the traditional US-centric economic order is being challenged. These shifts are not just reshaping global trade, they are also shifting the balance of power in international relations. For decades, the US dollar has been the cornerstone of global trade and finance. However, there is growing evidence that the dollar's dominance is slowly but surely waning. From 1999 to 2023, the dollar's share of global reserves has fallen from 71% to 58%. China, Russia, and other countries are beginning to settle trade deals in local currencies or explore alternatives to the dollar. BRICS nations are even looking into creating a new reserve currency to bypass the US dollar entirely. If the US dollar loses its status as the world's reserve currency, it would have massive implications for the U.S. economy. The U.S. would no longer be able to impose its will on the global financial system as easily, and the country could face inflationary pressures and instability in its own economy. The decline of the U.S. dollar would also undermine the U.S.'s ability to impose sanctions, a tool it has frequently used to exert geopolitical influence. Another significant area of concern for the U.S. is China's rapid advancements in technology. From artificial intelligence to quantum computing, China is pushing the boundaries of technological innovation at a pace that challenges the U.S.'s traditional dominance. As China continues to make strides in these fields, the U.S. may struggle to maintain its competitive edge, particularly in emerging technologies that will drive the future of the global economy. If China becomes a leader in AI, quantum computing, and other cutting-edge technologies, the U.S. may find itself in a position where it has to rely on Chinese innovation rather than leading it. This could have long-term implications for the U.S. economy and its position as a global technological powerhouse. In conclusion, what we are witnessing today is more than just another trade disruption. It represents a pivotal moment in the U.S. and global economy. Whether this marks the collapse of the U.S.-centric world order or sparks a renewal of American strength depends on the choices policymakers make today. One thing is clear: the future of global trade is being redefined. As China's influence grows and the U.S. faces mounting challenges, the world may be moving toward a multipolar economic system where no single nation dominates. The real question is, will the U.S. adapt to these changes, or will it allow history to repeat itself? The coming years will determine how these shifts play out. Will the U.S. reinvest in its infrastructure, boost domestic manufacturing, and prioritize innovation? Programs like the CHIPS Act, which allocates $52 billion to strengthen semiconductor manufacturing, are a step in the right direction. But much more will be needed to secure the U.S.'s place in the changing global landscape. What are your thoughts on these developments? Leave your comments below and don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth discussions on this topic. Thank you for watching.